This is an 86 Jeep and an 87 Toyota. Two mass-produced 80s vehicles you probably wouldn't have looked at twice if you saw them on the road back then. Except these days, a mint Grand Wagoneer like this one can easily sell for $50,000. And a perfect 80s Land Cruiser, and this one is perfect, with only 36,000 miles all in Southern California, can easily pull $25,000 to $35,000. How? The simple truth is that old SUVs are rapidly shooting up in value, and these two are leading the charge. Right now, I'm going to show you around these two pristine examples of a Land Cruiser and a Grand Wagoneer so that you can start to understand why old SUVs are becoming so desirable. I think part of the reason people like these old SUVs so much is that they're totally back to basics without being so old school that you get rained on when you drive down the street like an old military Jeep. Essentially, these are the SUV in its purest form, except they're still somewhat modern. To show you what I mean, I'm going to start with the Land Cruiser. I've always felt the best example of how basic the FJ60 Land Cruiser is found in its horn buttons. Bear with me, this will make sense. On one side of the steering wheel, you have a regular horn button. On the other side, you have the same button except it's flipped over, so now the horn is upside down. On the bottom of the steering wheel, same button again, and now the horn is pointing towards the sky. So they're inconsistent. In today's world, you could never get away with this, with focus groups and everything being engineered to precision and customer satisfaction indexes. But back in the 80s, when this Land Cruiser came out, Toyota was like, hey, they work. Why make 3 buttons? And they've carried that strategy throughout the entire rest of the car. On the door, there's no fancy, beautifully designed door panel with the finest materials. You got a door panel. You got your door latch, you got your window roller, you got your storage, you got your handle. It works. Why make 3 buttons? The interior air conditioning vents were easy. You wanted it closed, you twisted it closed. You wanted it moved, you moved it. It worked. Why make 3 buttons? In back, the tailgate couldn't have been easier to open. You wanted the top part open, push it, open the top part. You wanted the bottom part open, pull the latch, open the bottom part. There was no little clicker with powered lift gate. There was no waving your foot under the bumper. It just worked. Why make 3 buttons? Toyota was mandated by the federal government to put in reflectors. So rather than carefully integrating them into some beautiful front headlight design, they just drilled them into the fenders. They did the same thing in back. It was effective. Why make 3 buttons? And then there was the grille. It wasn't some fancy design that looked the same across the whole model range because it's part of our corporate identity. It was 90 degrees straight up. It said Toyota on it. What were you driving? Toyota. It was basic. Why make 3 buttons? The Grand Wagoneer, meanwhile, is the purest original form of something else, the luxury SUV. Not many people realize this, but back in the day, the Grand Wagoneer was a true competitor to the Range Rover, an ultimate high-end luxury SUV. But when you get into a Grand Wagoneer, you don't get modern gizmos like screens and adjustable suspension and terrain response systems that cater to the driving experience to whatever surface you happen to be on, like parquet wood garage floors. Instead, you get cool, old-school luxuries. For example, you want wood? You got it. There's wood on the sides. There's wood inside the doors. Here, 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 and here. There's wood on the dashboard. Wood hides the ashtray and the glove box. There's wood on the back. And more wood on the inside panel of the rear doors. And just when you thought they ran out of places to put wood, nope, there's wood on the rear spoiler thing and on the roof racks. But it wasn't all about the wood. One of the Grand Wagoneer's coolest old school features. You walk up to it and you want to put some stuff in the back, just turn the key and down comes the window. You can just toss it in. And then when you're done, you just put it right back up. There was a lot of cool stuff inside too, like 4 power windows, power locks, and power mirrors, all the way back in 1986. There were even power seats. And there was a multi-speaker high-end sound system before putting luxury sound systems in cars was even a thing. And let's not forget these ultra squishy, super comfortable leather seats, both front and back, that made you feel like you were riding on a cloud. There was a simple switch for four-wheel drive, so you didn't have to get out and lock and unlock the hubs like in other utility vehicles. And once you got into the cargo area, it was, of course, a beautifully carpeted affair with more than enough room for the family golden retriever. These may not seem like very impressive amenities, but trust me when I say that back in the 1980s, this thing was cutting edge. Back then, the only other utility vehicles people had were those big old Blazers and Broncos that they would use to go mudding on their property, or the National Park Service would use to go rescue stranded hikers. Not this thing. This was a true luxury SUV. But more important than the features and the equipment of these things, I think, is their appearance. Now, if you're not into SUVs, you're probably looking at them and thinking, well, these are just big old boxy things. Yeah, well, check out some modern SUVs and take a look at how similar they look. Now, look again at these. Do you see how different they look? The Land Cruiser doesn't have any soft, windswept curves designed to evoke a beach, or whatever crap designers say. They weren't trying to evoke anything. They were trying to make a capable, practical vehicle. And then there's the Grand Wagoneer. In today's world, a luxury SUV means lots of LED lighting and 22-inch wheels and a giant grille and enough horsepower to propel the Latvian Navy. That wasn't the case with the Grand Wagoneer. It has all the look of a luxury SUV, but none of the in-your-face. And you can't tell me these wood panels aren't really cool. And then there's the obvious reason why these SUVs have become so desirable. Because of the way they drive. All right, I decided to drive the Jeep first because unlike the Land Cruiser, I've never actually driven one of these, and I've always wanted to know what it was like. Oh, it's smooth. So smooth. The engine is like so smooth. The acceleration is so incredibly smooth. The braking too. I feel like I'm in a luxury car. Oh, the steering feel is so bad. You can just turn the steering wheel wherever you want. I love it. It's so mushy. It honestly drives like an old Rolls Royce or something like that. You don't feel that much, and it's so quiet. And you can turn the wheel like 10 inches in any direction and nothing happens. I just love the steering. The steering is so vague and so mushy, and that's exactly what I want for my Grand Wagoneer. There is no sense of urgency in this vehicle. There is simply a sense of joy and relaxation that modern SUVs don't tend to have. The seats are so comfortable. They're not firm at all. This is old school seating. Back when you could you sit down, the thing would collapse about 2 inches and let your butt really get nice and in there. Fully on the throttle now. I mean, it makes a lot of noise. These SUVs are just from a completely different era, and it's an era we're starting to appreciate. In today's world of modern crossovers that have to do so many things, there's something nice about you don't have to think about XM and navigation systems and forward collision warning. It's just like, yep, what you see is what you get. I mean, that guy's got his Forester. He can do things so much better than I can, but he's got a Forester. This was the last bastion of true 50s Americana trying to hang on, this car. You pack a lunch and you go out for a Sunday drive. That was this car. And when this car ended and became the Grand Cherokee, it was almost a symbol of the end of an era. Suddenly the mass-produced everyman SUV had come out, and the old school station wagony feels like an occasion car, that was done. All right, I'm taking out the Land Cruiser. 37,463 original miles. It drives like a time capsule too. I mean, it still feels new, but it's still an old Land Cruiser and an old SUV. And so it's kind of bumpy, but it's just so much fun. I have this king of the road driving feel in this thing. Now this is a 4-speed manual, and the tach goes up to 4,500 and 4,000 is redline. That's all you get. The visibility is unreal in a car like this, because not only were you really high up, but in addition, you also didn't have all this crash stuff, this crash protection and airbags and all this side impact stuff. You can just see everything. It bumps around, and it's not a good ride, But that's kind of the fun of it. You're like, yeah, I'm in an old school truck. The new Land Cruiser is a tremendous car, but you know, I drove one the other day. It has crawl control. You get stuck in sand, it will guide itself out. This thing, there was no guiding itself anywhere. You did everything. There's a choke, but there's something about that that puts a smile on your face. You feel like you're driving an old farm tractor and you love it. All right, I'm flooring it. Oh, yeah, okay. That's cute. That's funny. Looking out over this windshield, you just feel so cool. It's an awesome experience. The new Land Cruiser offers a different experience, also an awesome experience, but this is different. You can't replicate this in a new car. In a modern SUV, it's too easy, right? The Land Cruiser, it's not easy, but it's fun. And yet it's practical. You don't have to get like an old 60s Corvette and you can't really drive it all that often. And this thing you can take around every day and it's like, yeah, that's my car. So now you might understand why the old SUV is experiencing a resurgence. They're cool to drive. They're cool to look at. They're back to basics. And you can put your whole family and all your gear in it. It's essentially a classic vehicle and a practical vehicle in one. And here's the best part. These are rentals. That's right, I'm here in Minneapolis and I've borrowed these from MORRIE'S Heritage Car Connection, which is an exotic and vintage rental car arm of a couple of Minneapolis area car dealerships. But instead of wall-to-wall Lamborghinis and Bentleys, they have a Land Cruiser and a Grand Wagoneer, which I think is even cooler. Thanks for watching, and for more of my thoughts on old SUVs and their rise in value, don't forget to check out my column at autotrader.com/oversteer. Not so with the Grand Wagoneer. It has all the look of a luxury. There goes an Aventador. We'll redo this line.